This is episode 1 of the conversation live with Skywomen, women who have fallen victim to various kinds of scam. In some instances, some of these ladies have lost millions. And if you think that you are immune to being scammed, you may want to listen to what these women have to say. Some of their stories are quite sobering. Don't go away, we'll be right back. And welcome back. I'm your host, Bridgetti Banda. Skywoman is an NPO formed by Louise Haynes, who researched various forms of scams over the last 3 years. And one of its key focuses is education and empowerment. Louise discovered that victims selected by scammers are generally single women, they're middle-aged and or business owners. Scam artists are professionals with a very thorough selection process. They've got access to spyware, they disguise their accent, they use fake profiles, and they generally steal the identities of other people. It could be yours. They come across as genuine, sincere, and they usually create a fake profile that is fairly high profile, or so it may appear. And the way they operate is that they create a trust relationship with their victims, and then things move forward very quickly. Generally, it's something like there's a crisis that's happened, such as an immediate surgery, or they say that their bank accounts have been hacked, and this is all in an attempt to avoid meeting the woman that they are scamming in person. After that, the chat becomes urgent. They first ask for a small amount of money, and then the larger sums are required for all kinds of nefarious reasons. By this time, the victim is emotionally involved with her scammer. Loans with interest are promised as soon as they meet. Sometimes the scammer gets aggressive and questions the trust and the integrity of the victim. They ensure that victims, and this is the key thing, they ensure that victims become distanced from their friends and their family, because if they knew about it, they would alert them to the scam. In the meantime, victims at this point are so afraid, and they continue to send funds desperately, or despite their inner intuition. The victims, as a result, usually lose everything, including their savings, their cars, their homes. The problem they face is that the police are often unsympathetic and they lack in cyber fraud training. So Skywoman has formed a support group for women who've been scammed. So I invite you to join us as we share their stories. Today's guest is Gillian Goldman Bentley. Now, Gillian holds a master's degree in English and French from the Wits University in Johannesburg. She also holds a degree in business administration from the Wharton School of Business. Her corporate career includes being the marketing director of Cape Tourism, a director of TWS Public Relations, conference manager for Lufthansa, marketing director for Young Presidents Association, and the Group Public Relations Director for the Southern Sun Intercontinental Group. Her PR company had well-known international clients. Gillian is also the Public Relations Director of Toastmasters Chapter Melrose Arch, Johannesburg. She's a published author. Her book is about managing and creating perceptions. She's working on a new book called Dark Secrets, part of a trilogy of novels that will be published in late 2019. She was also voted one of the 100 most influential businesswomen in South Africa by Fair Lady and ABSA, and voted as one of the top 10 public relations consultants in Southern Africa. Why am I sharing all this with you? It's to help you understand the profile of the kind of women that these scam artists target. They're very, very deliberate in the way that they choose the women. So I'm going to invite onto screen with me now Gillian, so that she can tell her story. Welcome to the show, Gillian.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
It's a big pleasure. So, Gillian, you have fallen victim to one of these scams. How did it happen? Tell us your story.
Unfortunately, yes, it's the truth, and in telling it, I can hardly believe it happened to me. After 30 years of being quite a savvy businesswoman, it so happened that I was vulnerable closer to a Christmas period. That's 18 months ago. And I got a Facebook request from somebody who was allegedly Italian, living in Camps Bay in Cape Town, and seeking a friend. So, unlikely as it seemed, I did accept it. And half an hour later, the person actually called me. And I asked how he got my number, and apparently the IT person who'd set up the social media profiles had included my telephone number, which was a big mistake. At any rate, I engaged with a series of chats with this gentleman who didn't sound at all Italian, nor was his name Italian. Nevertheless, he told me he was importing exotic cars and on his way to Rome for his son's wedding.
Gillian, I think we've lost sound there a little bit.
That was good. He was
If you're watching, could you let us know if you can hear the sound? I'm unable to hear Gillian at the moment. So if you, I want to say welcome. Someone is watching on LinkedIn as well. If you are watching, please let me know if you're able to hear Gillian, because I'm unable to hear her at the moment.
Are we back on stream?
I can hear you now. Yes.
Great. Well, as you described previously, he did tell me that his Standard Bank private banking account had been hacked and he couldn't pay for the son's wedding. So he asked me, as you said, for a small amount to get to Sicily, where he could borrow the money to pay for the wedding. I did question his integrity because he was supposed to have a lot of wealthy, well-connected friends, and he said nobody was available. At any rate, reluctantly, I said, I don't know anything about you. I've never met you. I don't have any contact. I don't know your home address. This is just giving money away. And he did start that aggressiveness about trust and so on. And I'm to be his future wife, and I must trust him. Anyway, reluctantly, I did send the amount of money. which gradually, as you have mentioned, became more and more, and many, many difficulties happened about his return to South Africa. I, in fact, don't think he left Cape Town at all. This was all just a setup. And it was so cleverly set up that when I blocked him on various occasions, he called me from a telephone number which did have a Rome prefix. So this is just how smart. And when I objected to the amount of money that I couldn't afford it, he said too much to give me. He would be paid with any amount of interest, and he was about to return. The climax came when he was caught boarding the flight, apparently, with large amounts of cocaine. And he told me the fine in Italy was 25 years in prison. Stupidly, I said, well, perhaps I could sell my new Audi car to pay the fine, which I did. I then must believe I went into some lunatic behavior, because after that, I also sold my jewelry. And naturally, my business was not doing well because my attention was taken up by assisting this person who I'd never met. At any rate, I then got into financial difficulties and was forced to sell on auction my beautiful apartment in Melrose Arch. Predictably, my friends and family were just unbelieving of this chaotic situation, which is hard to understand, I do agree. But they do hold a sort of hypnotic effect on a person. And because of the frequent calls and your inner intuition, which tells you that people will say you are being taken for a ride, you're a fool, you don't really share your thoughts with other people. Well, the sad story is that I ended up homeless, jobless, and friendless, and eventually camped out in police stations and hospitals. The social worker at one of the hospitals in Johannesburg found me a shelter in Onsterpoort in Pretoria, where I ended up and spent 10 months. If it had not been for a psychiatrist who suggested I give Louise Haynes a call from Skywomen, I guess I would still be at the shelter. Louise arranged for me to be transported from there and into somebody's home in Johannesburg. It has really, really been a terrifying time, because when I did try and lodge several police cases with the Norwood police station, they told me that nobody held a gun to my head, and I was myself to blame for my predicament. And they also said to me that they were not debt collectors. So eventually, after seeing the station commander, they gave me a case number and referred it to commercial crime, because the amount involved exceeded 7 million rand, which in anybody's currency is a lot of money. And in my small boutique business, sank me. And of course, that's not even what it does to a person emotionally, having to sell all your belongings and everything just to survive, really. And it's surprising to learn after my PR association with Skywomen just how many women worldwide, and in particular in South Africa, have been victims of this cyber fraud. We don't get much sympathy from people who find it very, very hard to believe that you hand over well-earned money to a complete stranger. But I must tell you, their story is extremely professional and very convincing. And I think I'm a skeptical kind of person, but I bought into it and lost everything.
Gillian, if we have to unpack your journey, as you know, as one of the women who have been targeted by this very, very professional crime syndicate, what could you have done differently? What was it that prevented you from seeing that you were being scammed, before it was too late? What is your advice to someone watching this? What would you say to them?
Well, I do think really that any invitations that are sent via Twitter, Instagram, or any of those social platforms should be thoroughly investigated. And then when I showed it subsequently to people who do know more than I do, the person had virtually no friends, no photographs, and said very little about themselves. And I've come to learn that that is a red light to a scammer. And somehow his profile was too perfect and his look was so professional and sophisticated. And in fact, a private investigator afterwards showed me the actual picture of the person, who was very, very different and married with 2 children and didn't live in Camps Bay but lived in the Strand. I hear these kind of people are not they are really called runners, and they are the people who facilitate the funds, and somehow they appear to be Nigerian and they end up there. I have attended to one of the top forensic people in this country. And I mean, the deposit is close to 125,000 Rand, with 5,000 Rand an hour after that to find the people. And that doesn't mean that they guarantee receiving any of the stolen funds. And of course, at this stage, I can hardly afford a loaf of bread. So that's out of the question. But they tell me that the sooner you alert somebody to a possible fraud, the sooner they can catch them. But I have to say the police are extremely unsympathetic. And it's only professional people such as psychiatrists and psychologists who seem to have seen this many times before. In fact, the gentleman I saw said I was the 3rd one this week he had consulted with on the same subject. And it does seem to be targeted at women, successful women, or apparently successful.
So in just unpacking what you said now, when somebody sends you a friend request on social media, if the person has a very charming looking photograph, if they have very few friends on their profile, if they don't share anything that seems ordinary, some personal information, or just some information. In other words, if their profile has very little on it, it usually is not a bona fide profile. And often what they do is they will use photographs of military men. They will use photographs of professional business women. I know someone, for example, his picture is used daily. He spends a specific time every single day scouring social media to try and find where these people are using his photograph, because that's a very common practice for them to do. And so you want to be very careful if someone sends an invitation and you don't personally know them. What I personally do as a practice is when I get a friend invitation from someone and they seem to be connected to someone that I know, I will approach the person and say, do you know this person personally? And if they don't know the person personally, I will not connect to them. So there are warning signs, there are triggers. Another thing one could do is if you've received a friend request Send it to a few of your friends and say, do you know this person? Have you seen this person's profile? Don't try and do this on your own. And if in doubt, I think the golden rule, yes, if in doubt, don't do it.
You know, you're absolutely right, because when I think of the ramifications, what happened afterwards, and how hard it is to get back on your feet, having really lost everything, you can't be too careful. And I really only entered the social media arena because I was busy publishing my first novel, and they suggested publishers are more persuaded to publish if you have a strong social media following. So I guess, yes, it is my fault. I didn't do enough research, and nobody had heard of this person. And in fact, the person doesn't exist and doesn't even speak Italian. So the person whose name is Alan Craig is actually quite a famous baseball player in the United States. So it was all a predictable, silly story. But I kept on, I suppose, sponsoring the funds because I thought if I stop, I won't have any chance of getting a refund later, well, which I didn't anyway.
So that is how you get caught in the cycle of sending repeat funds, because now you are hoping to get your money back, and it becomes almost like a drug. You have to keep doing this with the hope of getting your funds back, and obviously that never happens. So tell us a little bit about Skywomen. What is Skywomen about, and how is Skywomen aiming to make a difference?
Well, Skywomen was started by Louise as an intended support group, because truly there's more sympathy, I guess, for somebody who's been physically raped or robbed or had some kind of physical challenge than an emotional challenge. Because as a matter of fact, you actually, it's like a drug, as you say, believe you're in love with this person. And this person is coming to rescue you, although that was really the last thing on my mind. But Sky Women was formed to be a support group to alert women of the dangers of this. And you will be surprised as to the level of people who've come forward. It doesn't matter black, white, or social strata. It seems that people have been caught on all levels. I know somebody who's also been caught because they bought a dog that was advertised, and in fact there was no dog. Whose case is even more extraordinary. She had a friend request from somebody who's Spanish, lived in Cape Town, but actually is located in Lesotho, building some construction bridge or something. This is a 4-year relationship, which she will not believe is a scam. She has never met the man and has sent him thus far 16 million rand, including gifts and watches and all sorts of things. In return, he has sent her some sort of tin engagement ring, and she walks around telling people she is engaged. And this is a very, very, very savvy businesswoman who's terribly mean with her money. So it does affect anybody, really. One mustn't think one is immune, because if caught at a particular time when you're a bit vulnerable and you have time on your hands, you can be scammed.
So, Gillian, what would you say to anyone out there, in particular any women out there who are currently finding themselves in a position where they realize they've been scammed? What is your advice to them? What can they do?
they can check that person out. There is actually certain spyware offered, in fact, by Facebook that can check people out. If you report the person's profile and alleged name, they can check it out. But I know that various people, including advocates, have approached the CEO of Facebook, who's not been particularly sympathetic to the cause. But also Facebook has paid very many millions to the Israeli government because they took them on for promoting the cause of Palestinians who were killing innocent civilians. And they've faced in court on various occasions, have had to admit guilt and paid. So this is different, true, but it's had a very, very damaging effect. In fact, many women who are a little bit less strong, let's say, have become suicidal, homeless, and that was really their life savings, and that was the end of them. Because I can promise you that one doesn't get too much support from one's family or friends, who are very skeptical and really turn the matter around and tell you are the one who's to blame. How can you give money to a complete stranger? I agree with that. And I do know that this has happened on dating sites as well. But I assure you that there are scammers whose day's work is to locate these people, track them down, and move the scam from a platform like Facebook or Twitter or Instagram to WhatsApp or to email, and make sure that they contact you very, very frequently, so that they know what you're doing at all times of the day and night, and what your likes and dislikes are. And it seems that they know you better than their own relatives. It's the most peculiar thing. And I was diagnosed, whether it's true or not, as having bipolar 2, where one has occasions, and this was a very severe occasion, where you feel invincible and you feel this has got to work out. It's so right. Here's my perfect person. And I remember one of the sentences that he wrote was impressive. I'd like to take all your battles away from you. And I thought, wow, that would be nice. And you never have to worry about money ever again in your life. So as single women, we are always worried about money. And the thought of having a support at your side is very enticing. And I still can't believe it as I retell it again, because it's true. How can you give money to a person you don't know?
So, Gillian, if people want to reach out to Skywomen for support, how can they contact Skywomen?
Skywomen has a website. It's either support@skywomen.co.za, or the site is called Skywomen Support Scamming Victims. And we do intend taking it globally, because this is not only a South African problem. It occurs in England, in Australia, oddly enough, and in Asia. However, of course, they have more skilled officers who've been trained on cyber fraud, and they do go after these people and often locate them and the funds and retrieve the funds. Our people here, and unfortunately, haven't been introduced to this kind of sophisticated fraud, which will continue. There will no doubt about that.
And do you have a social media presence where people can find you apart from your website, skywomen.com? Is it skywomen.com or skywomen.co.za?
ZA. We are also going to get the .com site, because we've been contacted by people all over the world saying that they've had this exact problem and lost their entire lives. So we will be opening offices. And of course, that requires financial support. So we're currently on a big corporate drive to encourage companies to support us. Because without money, I mean, one can't do very much. We want to eventually open a house where people can come literally for food or a roof over their head. It's that serious. Because whilst many men, I will say, laugh it off, it's really extremely serious and has devastating consequences. I'm busy writing a book on this subject.
Gillian, if anyone watching out there may want to use you on public, at public events to speak about this, because your story is a relatable one and can be used to empower other women out there, would you be available for public speaking events?
Oh, yes. I'm the public relations officer for Toastmasters in Melrose Arch. So I've had a lot of experience of public speaking. And of course, this is a very, very disturbing subject. I am available. I am on the internet, on all social media platforms, including LinkedIn. And I think the more one exposes it and talks about it, the less chance these scammers have of attracting women who have little funds and eventually give everything to them.
Gillian, thank you very much for sharing your story. And I want to say thank you to everyone who has joined us live today and anyone watching this on the replay. Thank you for your time. Please do share the broadcast and let's share the stories of these Skywomen, women who have been specifically targeted by scammers. These are professional scammers who target women with a specific profile. So do share this to create further awareness. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye for now.
Thank you, Bridgetti, for the opportunity.